Welcome and thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel so that you get all the videos that I upload. Please give the video a thumbs up and share the video. I've compiled a couple of questions to help the beginners who have started with programming. I have uploaded a video that introduces the viewers to C++, and then these are a couple of questions that you can do to test if you are understanding or to just get into writing, because the best way to learn coding and programming is to write code. So I'd advise you to pause the video and then look at the questions, do the question, and then watch the solution. They are pretty simple and straightforward questions that are meant to just reinforce the knowledge of being introduced to C++. So for those who have not watched the introduction to C++, I will post the link on the description below. Please click and watch the introduction and then come back to this question. You will understand a lot better. So the first one, it says write a program that displays tertiary C++. So a lot of people who write code for the first time in C++, there is a famous source code that prints hello world. In this channel I'm just seeing out tertiary C++. So it's a similar program but with a different screen. So I'm going to add a file now. So the name of the file, I'm going to say it is I'm going to call these ones intro for introduction, intro number 1, which is question 1.cpp, and then because I'm going to use the cout function that is defined in the IOStream header file, so I'm going to include the IOStream header file. Then, because I don't want to write std every time I write cout and end line, I'm going to include the namespace std, and then obviously in C++ for your program to run, the main function has to be there because that is the entry point of execution. So return 0. Alright, then all you need to do is to just say cout tertiary C++. You can end line if you want to, you can terminate the statement, it will still work. And then once you run that, then you should see tertiary C++ on your terminal or console. Boom, you have written your first program in C++, right? And then going to the second one, the second one says write a program that displays tertiary C++ on one line and C++ on a new line. So this second question is to remind you or test you on understanding of the new line or the end line function. So this is intro number 2.cpp, and then similar I will display something, so I will include that, include IOStream, and then they're using namespace, std, then int main, return my 0. Then what does the question want? It wants me to display tertiary on one line, C++ on a separate line, unlike the last one which we displayed both on the same line. So obviously to display we need end line, and then tertiary, that is on one line, right? That will be one line. Let me just first show you. This is one line, right? This is one line. You might be thinking that, okay, why don't you just include n line? Even if you include n line, this will still be displayed on the same line, right? Because this C out will display this, then it will go to a new line, which there is nothing after that new line. So if you see out, you'll see that it's on the same line just like the previous one. So you must first display tertiary C++, right? Then end line, then on a separate line now you can see out C++. This is how you display on a new line. Tertiary on one line and then C++ on a new line. Now you might think that since I've written this instruction on line 7 and this one on line 8, which is a new line in itself in the scope of main, you might think that, okay, that is why it is displaying here. Let me remove this and show you that if you don't include that end line, it will display them on the same line. So if you run that, as you can see, they're on the same line with no spaces in between. If you want a space, put a space there, and you will see that tertiary and C++, they have a space in between. So now that end line is needed for you to print on a new line, right? This is what we use to go to the next line, right? So if you run that now, you should see it's on a separate line. Then the third one, rewrite the following programs such that it can successfully compile and run. So obviously, based on that question, these programs here, they have mistakes there and there on purpose. So you just have to rewrite them or fix them such that they run. Now I'll introduce a new file again, which is intro3.cpp. Then I will copy this code, paste it here, and then obviously if I run that, first test it because it might be running, right? And then if I run that, it's complaining no such directory. Now part of this exercise, it is to show you that when you get errors, right, yeah, the code is not working. That's not good, but it is good that you are getting errors, because the good thing about errors is that number one, it is telling you that the code is not working, sure. Number two, it is telling you exactly where you have made a mistake, a syntax error or whatever you have left out, but the error messages will tell you exactly. So use the error messages to fix your mistakes instead of panicking, right? So now it's telling you that this thing here is all trim, no such file direct. So the first mistake is there. This is iostream, so you fix that, right? You might keep doing that, running the code and letting the compiler tell you, but that's not the purpose of this exercise, right? Look at the code, read the code, and spot where the mistakes are, right? But it is good to also not panic when you are writing code and then you see errors. Now I don't want you to use errors. I want you to look at the code and figure out where is the problem. The compiler is already obviously aiding you, right? It's showing you that there is a problem here. But when you look at this, you can see that this is not known here, right? Because this is obviously under that header file, but which namespace? It is the STD. As you can see, STD, it is included for n line. However, cout is not defined this side. So you put STD there and then save, compile. The code compiles correctly. You have fixed now. As you can see, it is compiling and running. So the only thing that you had to fix there was that iostream and that STD, right? You had to define the namespace of that cout, where that function implementation is, right? Going to the next one. This is 3.1, 3.2 I mean. Now I'm going to create a new file. Let me rename this one to say this will be 3.1. Just going to say it's 31. I'll create a new one, intro 32.cpp, which is 3.2, right? Take this code, go here, paste. This one obviously has issues as well, so the compiler will tell you as well. First problem is somewhere here. So as you can see, similar issue from the first one, spelling error there. And then you come here, you can see that, oh, number one, so this code was like this. Number one, we are not defining the namespace for cout. So instead of writing that std twice, right, every time there's a cout, you can just use that one line of saying using namespace. Let me write it out in full. Using namespace std. So unlike here where you are writing std, right, std for every time you are using these functions, you can just declare it once here, that using namespace std, and then every time it says cout and end line, it will actually know that it is from that namespace. So that's the first thing. You have fixed that for the cout. The second part now would be the C++ syntax requires you that every instruction, it must end with a semicolon if you are done, right, writing it. So this one must display as hello world, so that instruction is completed. So for the compiler to know that that is completed, you must put a semicolon. So there is the semicolon. The second instruction displays C++ is easy to learn, which is, it is easy to learn, right? And then return 0. Now if you watch closely there, right, for me, I'd say, in fact, this will not, it should not run, right? Why? In line 8, right, this is a string. However, it has single inverted commas, which those are used for a character, right? And a character should be a single letter, number, special case, whatever, but it should be one, right? So this should be a string. I'm just going to test this and run it just to confirm exactly as you can see. Character constant, too long for its type, right? Because if it's single inverted commas, it must be a single letter or a number or a special character. It must be one character. These are multiple characters, which means it's a string. So you need to fix that into double inverted commas instead of single. I'm just going to highlight that. In fact, let me put it like this, 1 1. There you go. So I've fixed the code. It is fine from here. It will compile and run correctly. So the first thing was the header file was incorrect. The namespace for the functions was not declared so or included. You were supposed to include it manually for both of them, or just declare it once there. Then fix your, terminate your statement, and then a string. So a series of characters, that's a string. So it must be in double inverted commas. Then all of that, it is fixed, right? It compiles, it runs correctly. Since there is no end line, just like we shown on the last exercise, this will be printed on the same line. There is no space, so there will be no space. Code compiles and runs correctly. Next one. This was supposed to be 3.3 instead of 3.2. Then I will create a file for this one, intro 3.3.cpp. Right, copy the code, paste it here. Right, let's get to the fixing if there's anything that needs to be fixed. So I look at that code. You can see the header file, correct, it is fine. We have a main, written correctly. We have cout hello world. All the two functions, they are defined. Their namespace is defined as well, right? Good. The hello world is in inverted commas, a string, perfect. Now the return, it's returning false, right? That cannot be good. That cannot be correct, right? Because false, we know that is a boolean. False and true, it's a boolean. False corresponds to 0, and then true corresponds to 1. As we know, a boolean is a binary type, so it can only take 1 or 0. So the function main, the return type of this function is an int. So you'll understand return types when you get to functions. But because there is an int here, right, the type int, which is the function type of main int, this return here must always return integers. Whether it's 12, it's 1, it's 20, it must be an integer. So every time for main, you are returning 0 there, right? Then everything looks fine, everything is fixed. So I'll run that. You will see that it should compile correctly and display hello world. So the only thing that was supposed to be fixed there was the return. You cannot return a boolean on a return type of int. Hope you got that. Then the fourth exercise now, it says run the following programs and fix where needed. I think that is not a good question. You should, I made a mistake here. I think you should just fix where needed and run. Because if you run, then the compiler is fixing it, sort of like telling you where the issue is, right? Just try to first spot the issues, as many issues as you can spot, and then when you think that you have checked and everything looks fine in your eyes, then run it, instead of just running it first time and then the compiler is telling you what's wrong. The compiler is kind of telling you what's wrong, because when you're running, unfortunately, the IDEs, they give you that power of compiling while running. Like it checks the syntax basically, right? And the spellings and stuff like that. So obviously now it's red there, so you know there's a problem there. So the problem is with the header file spelling, right? Just like the first few exercises. Fix that. That is fine. We have an int main for sure, blah, blah, blah. We have not defined the namespace of those functions, right? Those are the first clear ones. Number 5, this is an integer, and then it's taking a double. That cannot be correct, but let's just skip that for now. Let's define the namespace. So simple way, using namespace so that you don't keep writing std 15 times. Namespace std. All right, all good, all compiling, returning an integer, sharp. Let us run that. It is 8. How is this 8? Because we have assigned 8.5. It is because you are assigning a double to an integer. So whenever you are assigning a double to an integer, what this does is that the integer type will only take the whole number, which is 8, and then it will ignore everything after that comma, right? It will only take the, even if you write it as 18 and then add a couple of floating points there, same thing, right? It will just take the whole number, because that's what an int is. So definitely there's something wrong with that. You can't assign a double to an int, so you need to change that to a double, right? Then it works fine. Now you can see the full number that you have initialized in line 7, right? The value must correspond to the type, right? So let us go. So in this exercise, you have to fix the types, right? And then also just define the namespace for those two. Let's go to 4.2. I will add a file for that as well. Intro 4.2.cpp. Yup. Paste the code, and then obviously quick one is that one. The STD now is defined for us, which is good. And then I see double constant price, okay. And then we are assigning the value on the next line, right? The C out, the namespace is obviously fine, and then we are displaying price. So now the compiler is already telling you something is not right there. What is not right? Whenever you declare a constant, because it is not a changing value or a changeable value, you must assign it at the point of declaration. So that is wrong, because right, whenever you declare a constant, you must give it a value on declaration, because after that declaration you can never change your value. So this 74 should not be assigned in line 8, it should be assigned in line 7, like this, right? This is how you declare a constant, because after this line now, that constant can never be changed. It will remain 74.36 until the program ends. There you go. Constant price display. Let us say you wanted to change that price to 0.5. 0.5. Right? You have assigned your constant here, but now you want to change that value. That's impossible because of that keyword const. And then with the const keyword, you can put it before the type, you can put it after the type, it's up to you. It all works fine, right? But obviously you can't change it. So let us delete that line. And then you can see that I've put the const before the type now, still works fine. But I just like to keep things consistent. Every time you declare a variable, you start with the type, and then everything else comes after the type. That's how I write my constants. There you go. Fixed everything, everything works. Moral of the question, a const is declared at the point of declaration and can never be modified or changed. Then let's go to the next line. Same mistake. This should be 4.3. This should be 4.4. That's the last question. All right, copy this and then create a file for it. Intro 4.4.cpp. Right, paste the code. Let me close those files. Format, first error, IOStream is spelled incorrectly. Good. And then namespace std is already declared for us. Double length assigned, all right, and then it's changed. So whenever you see out here, the value that you will see is sort of like the latest one or the last one that we assigned, because on declaration this value was containing 3.26, and then in line 8 that value was overridden by 74.36. Now if you can see that this is similar to the 4.3 question, it's showing you that with a variable, this is a normal variable, there's no const there, you can modify the value of this variable. As you can see now, instead of seeing, sorry, I highlighted this, so it's running int main only, there's no errors here. So it is displaying 74.36 instead of 3.26 because it was overridden in line 8. So with a normal variable, you can override the initial value. Let me remove that and show you that this initial is assigned to 3.6, and then in line 8 it is overridden, right? And then with a normal variable, you don't have to assign it on declaration because you can assign it later, right? Because once declared, it can be modified somewhere else. So that is not a problem, it will compile correctly. The thing about declaring a variable and not assigning it a value, you never know what the compiler will assign it to, because whenever a variable is declared, it must store something. So by default, your compiler assigns it a value. So you don't know what this compiler will assign to that value. So let us display Look at that. Scientific. Ooh, that's a really small value. But that's what happens when you do not assign a value. Like your compiler will just give it a random value, which you don't know what it is, right? And then what I do when I declare my values, I give them default values. For a double, if I don't know what the value should be at point of declaration, I just give it 0.0 so that I know that whenever I use it somewhere without first overriding it, I know exactly what the value is. So instead of getting that small number, I know that it is 0, right? That's how I declare my variables when I don't have a value at the point of declaration, assigning it to 0. So what did we fix here? Oh, this one was running perfectly, but it was just showing you, because I saw the question was saying fix where needed. So this one was, there was no need to fix it. It was all well and running. But it was showing you from the previous one that a normal variable, or a variable, instead of calling it normal, you can declare it and then modify it, unlike a constant. Then on the last question, so copy this code. Let me see, what did I do here? Okay, copy, and then intro 4.5 .cpp. What happened? Okay. Don't save. Create a file. Intro 45.cpp. Right. And then paste this code. So the first one, I hate this IDE. It tells you what is wrong, but there's the first one. And then using namespace is fine, and in the right space. And then the first line, double var variable 1, assigning it to a character. That is wrong, right? You need to fix that. You need to assign that to a decimal number. The second one, int, is assigned to a boolean. That can be correct. String assigned to a word, right? For that to be a string, it must be in double inverted commas. So I'm just going to fix that one. Then a long is assigned to a double. So a long is a bigger int. So it means it will just take the whole number. So you should fix that. A char is assigned to 7, not lecker. And then you have a float that's assigned to a string. Very bad. And then this statement is not terminated. So fix that. Alright. Then you've got length, which is a variable that is not declared. So to fix this, you can either delete it or declare this variable. But I'll just delete it, and then I will sort those correctly. I'll take that 7, put it here. I'll take that string, right? You don't even need to swap them, right? You can just assign the correct things here. So this is a floating point. I'll take that floating point. I'll assign it here. And then the double as well, I'll give it this floating point. Or the 7 was supposed to come here. And then the long, you can take the 7 as well. And so that should be fine now. A double to a double value, an int to a int, a string, double inverted commas, a long, it's an integer, a char, character, single inverted commas, float, it's a double value, floating point value. There your code runs and compiles correctly. What happened now? It says conflicting. Oh, I missed that one. So variables with the same name can't have that. So you need to change that, the sequence, or that was by purpose. So we fixed when needed. That's what the question said. Fix when needed. So there it is fixed, right? So it is sort of like sorting the correct values to the correct types, and also the question of reading code and spotting what's wrong and fixing it still continues even in this one. So the variable names, you can't have the same variable names even if they have different types. You can't have the same name with variables. Yeah, this was a fun exercise, simple, and yep, it's done. So I hope you guys understood and understands what each question was trying to reinforce and show you. Please subscribe to the channel so that you get all the videos that will be coming next. There's a lot of content that's still coming. Share the channel with everyone who wants to learn C++ or who's studying C++ or programming. Thank you.